over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mackie.
Hello and welcome to
Dave
and ampersand Mackie's Shiny Side Out on WZZR. Texters and ampersand. Coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. I like that name, ampersand. It's home to fresh, unadulterated ideas, going conversations in the chat room, and a place to get your merch. And when I mean unadulterated, I mean completely free, more or less, because we still have a radio code to abide by. This is show number 496,
Correct.
I think. 690 and 400, which means we're 4 shows away from show number 500, half a millennium, half a thousand. That's a lot of shows. And I feel every single one of them. So there you are. You can catch us on air, online, and on your smart device. There's so many of these now. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. TV killed radio star, you know. If you missed Solaris' show with Renee Colston, that's okay. That's okay, because you can catch her on the archives. And they were talking about animal healing. I didn't catch it. I missed it, so I will hurry to the archives, catch up on it. But as always, I'm sure Solaris delivered a knockout of a show. She always has great guests, great topics, and her own credentials are monumental, in my opinion. So if you do yourself a favor, sorry, Dave?
I agreed. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Do yourself a favor and get into the Freedom Slips archives as you can and check out her shows. There may be a $5 a month subscription fee, but you get all the shows of all the hosts on all of the Freedom Slips radio. So that's pretty awesome, I think. That's a lot. It's a lot of shows. And just speaking on that, of course, we've got other repositories, but this is around free speech and what we can and can't say. Just to be very clear, we need to adhere to the radio regulations, all right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's no foul language, etc.,
Correct.
or medical advice, etc., etc. This is for Revolution Radio, to be clear, right? And then for other platforms such as Patreon or YouTube, you got to be careful as well what you say, unless you want to be deplatformed. So we have a message to get out there, and we try to get as much of that message out as we can before we are, in fact, deplatformed, which we came pretty close to. But through Dave's tireless efforts and psychological warfare, I want to say, guerrilla warfare, he managed to keep us platformed into the future, hopefully. Now, before we start,
I simply used their own terms and
yes,
approached them from a legal perspective, and that's all.
And masterfully done so, my friend.
Thank you.
Before we get into the meat of the show, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we inhabit. For me here in beautiful Pamela Way, it's the Darug people.
And in correct pronunciation, the Darkinjal.
Thank you, sir. And we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And we may be talking about deceased people, but there shouldn't be any images of any deceased people on this show. So with that and the intro well and truly behind us, thank you very much for joining us yet again on our bumpy road to show number 500. It's been a second on this. Dave called me up 10 years ago and said, "Hey, Mackie, you want to be on the radio? You want to do a radio show?" I thought, okay,
sure.
Why not? Because he had been offered a spot by the
illustrious Nighthawk.
Yes, who and rest in peace. He no longer is with us. But thank you again for giving us the opportunity. I thought, yeah, sure, why not? How hard could it be? How long could it possibly last? I got busy on putting some stuff together. Dave got busy putting some stuff together, and we had enough for one show. One show. And then I think over the years, I can say this now, over the years, our shows have become more and more detailed, and the show notes have become longer and longer. So the current show cycle we're on, which is the rational and logical approach to the UFO and UAP phenomenon, is 67 pages. 67 A4 pages of show notes. So it does take us a little while to get through it, and I think this is the 5th installment? 4th? Not sure.
This is going to be number 8.
Holy moly! Okay, my time flies. Yeah, we're gonna look today. We're gonna look at the Nimitz, that pretty much broke it all, more or less, if you will, officially at least. The Tic Tac, right? UFO, etc., etc. So we're gonna talk about that. We also have an interview that we want to share with you of the pilot that actually made that encounter. So that's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. So with that, Dave, has it been a crazy week or has it been a crazy week?
I'm gonna go with the first.
Yes.
The first option, right? I could say all the above, but all right. So if I I think that the thing to mention here is the Orcis, AUKUS. So it's
what a name.
Yeah, I know, right? Because it could have been awful.
Yes. Yeah.
That could have worked as well. Anyway, look, whoever came up with that, they left a U off, but I think they did that intentionally.
Yes.
So the AU, the UK, and the US.
Yep.
Is what it's all about. It isn't to. These are 3 of the 5 eyes that have come together, and I believe that they came together at the last time they met and said that we need to do something about this. What can you do? Don't know what we can do. Australia came back from that meeting, researched. Oh, look at that lame, contract that we had with the French. We'll just take this clause, this exit clause, which basically does the same thing that the English did, stick 2 fingers up at the French to prove that they've not been captured. Because remember, the French were cutting off the fingers of the archers, and that's where that expression came from. So it's like the double bird, if you know what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. You might have seen that on my favorite of all-time favorite movies, on The Holy Grail.
I spit in your general direction.
Yeah, and then it became a meme, which I can't show memes anymore, by the way, because I just get in trouble off Facebook. Sorry, on YouTube. So in Australia, we have a severity of bushfire alert at any one time, and extreme in black is on the far right-hand side, and in its place is the French having choices, and it is all the different French taunters expressions, except for "I shall taunt you a second time," is the one that it's set to in this meme, and it's very funny. So the French. France has basically said, our ambassadors in all your countries, we're just going to return them home. We disagree with you so much, we're going to take that cushy job that we've given someone to be an ambassador, right? In your country, we're going to delete it. And that person's going, oh, what did I do? No. I like my wine and cheese.
Surrender, monkey.
Yes. Pouring the sparkling wine down the toilet, going, "This is not champagne." Right?
I don't drink, you swear.
I fart in your general direction. I really, really wanted him for the Prime Minister of France to do any of those taunts, and it would have made gold news. Gold, I tell you.
Yes.
Anyway, having said that, what was it? What is AUKUS? It's a group that decided that Australia should be part of the American technology group, and we should be receiving. And you've got to understand how funny this is. Nuclear-powered submarines, and they're going to be fitted out with, let's call it the IBM compatible version of the IBM chip, which has a couple more extra code commands because they invented it, and everything else is a clone. And it doesn't have those extra little code bits that you'd find on the CPU. Because America can't give away all of its tech, military tech. But we're in a tight group now, we're pretty happy with it.
It's only a group of 3, my friend. The only other time it happened was in 1956 to the UK. And we're the second nation the Americans have given this tech to.
So what's really funny about this is the submarines that we had purchased, well, contracted to produce, France to produce, actually were nuclear powered submarines. But because we had some issues around nuclear powered submarines in this country and no one ever would go with it, they go, let's convert those submarines to typical government. Let's convert them to diesel. Yes, that's what we'll do. We'll make the perfectly good nuclear-powered submarine. Let's make them diesel submarines. Oh no, we'll put the price up. I'm going to stop that accent. Right? How much is it going to put it up? I don't know. I can't stop.
Many billion.
Yeah, we'll just put some more zeros on the end. Anyway, so I'm going to get hate for that. So,
Sacre bleu.
Sacre bleu. C'est la vie. So that's what happened. And then we found an exit clause that allowed us to get out of it for whatever the cost is. We haven't still been determined. But now all we're doing is spending money somewhere else, and we're getting the same thing we could have got the first time at a lower cost, which is really funny. But I think the American tech in there is going to help us as an alliance, right? Because it's all shared battlefield or theatre tech, right? That's what that is all about. So there's a whole bunch of intelligence that's shared amongst everything. In the theatre, whether it's in a valley, in a mountaintop, in suburban warfare, every ion contributes to the whole battlefield theatre data. And if we were using someone else's tech, we wouldn't have eyes on that stuff. So it'd be all Morse code and flappy. The ships and they have the flappy Morse code stuff, and it'd be homing pigeons. It'd be everything else except for that beautiful connected tech that would be enjoying. So
there are a few interesting.
However,
Go on.
Biden's like, what's the English Prime Minister?
Boris.
Yeah, that's right.
Boris
so
Johnson.
thanks to
Boris.
Yes. And then he's staring at him, and I saw, like over the top. This is my brain doing this. It says name loading. Error. Like a little temperature bar, like it's loading.
Oh.
And he goes, that fellow from down under. That's
all
and
then,
could get
and then he goes, pal. And then he goes, Mr. Prime Minister.
That's right.
Not once does Scotty from marketing hear his name. Not once. It reminded me of George Bush. George Bush Jr. was together with John Howard. In fact, John Howard was in Washington when 9/11 happened, believe it or not. But what a surprise! And so he said in a state. This is a state dinner. The state dinner. George Bush said, Howard over there, little fella, he's not much to look at. He said this. He's not much to look at, but jolly or something like to the effect. Well, you can take what he says to the bank. He's a great ally. He's not much to look at, though. I thought to myself, oh my God, of all the backhanded compliments ever. But this was worse. I mean, no matter how much George Bush Jr. and even Donald Trump had you on the edge of your seat, wondering what they would say next. Joe Biden has me on the edge of my seat, thinking what he will not say next. What will he forget next? Did I put on my diaper? I can't remember. Oh, I shouldn't say that's not nice.
Wait. Oh, hang on, I'll just test it. No.
No. Oopsie. Excuse me, may I go to the bathroom? Yes, of course. Oh, thank you. It's only
didn't
funny.
Go anywhere, didn't I?
I didn't get up, sir. What? But it was a cringeworthy moment. It really was.
You can imagine how many meetings they must have been in. All those times before, leading up to this press release, right?
Yeah.
This world public moment.
Yeah.
And then for him just to not know who he is.
That was unbelievable. But the thing is this, that Dave, you said something very interesting here. So this must have been months. Like the people now say this has been 18 months in the making since they had the meeting 18 months ago, and maybe longer potentially, right? But in the meantime, we've had a contract with the French, like Dave has mentioned, worth $90 billion,
That's a lot of money.
which we're now in breach of. Now, I want to say something to the breach.
I bet the ETC will be 90 billion.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, there's no official global body that arbitrates between nations when they breach contracts. There's really no.
Paying. Done.
There's this. But the funny thing is this. So this defense initiative or the treaty is called AUKUS, AUKUS, but it's pronounced AUKUS. There's a a Roman god called Orcis, Orcus.
Oh, no.
There is, but it's pronounced the same, Orcus, right?
Yeah.
A god of the underworld in Italic and Roman mythology, and he was the punisher of broken oaths and contracts.
Oh, that's hilarious.
No, I'm serious. This is a thing. Orcus. Now he's like an orc, Orcus, right?
Yeah. You couldn't make this up.
No, you could. If you wrote a script for a TV sitcom about the West Wing, they would say, that's just nonsense. We can't do this.
Don't be silly. That never happened.
Yeah, and it goes, in fact, back to the Etruscans, right? Orcus goes back to the Etruscans, which is a pre-Roman people, of course. But yeah, the god of broken oaths and contracts. Now, on top of that, what you have is, and now this is nuclear propulsion. It's important to understand.
Propulsion.
Yeah. Now, having said that, though, and this is something that Dutton said. Oh, look, if we have extra ordnance in Australia, then that's a good thing too. Now, what we're all worried about is, or what I'm worried about is that we are getting
the wedge idea.
Yeah, we get nuclear weapons in Australia, which is not a good thing. We don't want nuclear weapons in Australia. We don't want nuclear weapons on our navy ships, submarines, whatever. We don't want it. I really don't think so.
Just remember, and I know you know this anyway, right? But for our peeps out there, the weapons that would be targeting Australia already pre-programmed, ready to push button, ready to launch on all of our airfields and military bases would be nukes anyway. So it's not like we've ever, they go, oh no, because they don't have nukes, so we won't use a nuke, right? We're just going to use conventional weaponry. No. I don't think it's in the minds of the people who have them. I don't think they go, because that country hasn't got it, we're not going to fire them at them.
No, look, there's something to it. It all depends. Look, when it comes to battlefield escalation, right? What is happening is you want to start.
With a nail in it.
Well, no, but I got a bigger stick with a bigger nail, and then where will we be? No, you as a sensible military leader, sensible military personnel, because they've gone through the ranks, etc., etc. I'm not talking about some crazy dictator that all of a sudden comes into power. I'm talking about people that understand the consequences of warfare and so forth.
You just described pretty much
every politician. They have a firm understanding of tactical and strategic weapons, right? A tactical weapon is a small yield nuclear device that you deploy against an army group in a field that is pretty much limited to a strike in that area.
It could be nuclear or non-nuclear, small tactical.
Sure. Yeah. And in fact, there's some non-nuclear ordnance that are as powerful as nuclear ordnances from, and even producing an electromagnetic pulse. That's how powerful these explosions are. I mean, there's some are just daisy cutters, etc., air fuel bombs. It's all there, right?
Daisy cutters.
Now, yeah, it's very euphemistic, right? But ultimately, strategic weapons like intercontinental ballistic missiles, and especially the supersonic that the Chinese are developing, the supersonic ballistic missiles, against which
they're no longer ballistic though.
Yeah, but they're
intercontinental.
Yes, sorry, you're right.
They're intercontinental hypersonic weapons.
Hypersonic. Sorry, you're quite right. Hypersonic. Now, there's no defense against these at the moment. There simply isn't. Okay, there's no defense against them. So we are coming into an era of warfare which might see the American armed forces at a disadvantage. But my problem here overall is twofold, Dave. Number one, we have a Collins-class submarine fleet in Australia right now that we're now going to update so it remains serviceable for the next 20 years. That's what we're doing right now, right? Now, the French submarines, which were meant to be, start a production pretty soon and be delivered, were meant to retire the Collins-class submarines. Now, having gone and pretty much thrown that contract out the window, offending AUKUS by, adopting Orcus, you now have that pushed back even further. So now we are 20 years out, 10 to 20 years before any submarines are deployed. So right now we are behind the 8 ball to the tune of 10 to 20 years at least to get these new submarines in. In the meantime, we use the Collins class.
The end of the World War III will have already happened.
Yeah, and the second thing, because it is such a long time, I need you to just understand what is going on exactly here. So it'll be 10 years at least to get these submarines in. In these 10 years, many things can happen, right? And it is almost unthinkable that China would allow such a strategic advantage for the Americans. I don't know what they would do or what they wouldn't do, but my point is, we've now openly declared, yeah, we're gonna do this, and here's my I flipped the bird at you, China. Thank you very much. Without having anything at all. It's like bluffing with a 2, a 3, a king, a queen, and that's nothing at all for different suit. Nothing. Right. We say we're going to do this in 10. You better watch out. We're going to come after you in 10 to 20 years time. It's like, what? It's actually really stupid because
in fact it's totally embarrassing because right now we don't even have the tech to put in a Kia.
No,
computer chips.
and the thing is this. So traditionally, and this is true. Traditionally, the UK, and it's like first the UK and then after World War II, the US have been Australia's biggest military and strategic partners. That's a fact. It's true. We went to every British war, right? Yep. That's how the Anzac myth was born. Anzac as well. The Anzac myth is and we went to every American war afterwards as well, including Korea and Vietnam.
That's right.
And Afghanistan and anyway. So in Iraq. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a truth. That is a truth. But there's another truth, which is that China is our single biggest trading partner. Without China, and that's a fact, and China's voracious appetite for our iron ore and other things, but specifically iron ore and copper, our economy would have tanked along with every other economy in the world. But because there was such an appetite, we actually weathered the economic problems over the last few years in relative health. We came out pretty good. Now, if China really wanted to cripple Australia, they just stop buying our stuff. And not just wine and lobster. No, we're talking about real stuff now. Like we're talking about, iron ore, copper, etc. We're talking about rare earth minerals. And this is one thing that is very, very serious. I'm going to talk about now. Pork. As soon as I see China stop buying Australian pork, I'm going to move. I'm going to move real far away from Australia because that is the key indicator. The Chinese love pork. They really do. Eat a lot of it. And globally, because of the swine flu of recent times, Australia is the only major untainted source of pork products. Yeah. Okay, and trust me, the Chinese consume a lot of pork, a lot of Australian pork. So that for me, that's a much better indicator than iron ore or copper is the pork because the people are directly affected.
That's the relationship indicator.
100%. So, and funny thing is, talk about a relationship, Dave. Do you know that the French have withdrawn their ambassadors from the US and from Australia?
Yeah.
I mean, wow. I mean, they're really upset. And you know what? I can't really blame them, to be honest.
Have you ever changed vendors before, Mickey? I know I have.
Oh yeah, it's like breaking up. It's a relationship. It's not working, and you had your good times. You remember that.
It's flaming you on Facebook any minute.
Oh yeah, you get the midnight calls, right? And then the hang-ups.
Yeah, that's right. They'll get drunk and then call you back.
Yep, that's right. And then they hate you the next day, and they burn your car, and that never happened to me.
Takes me back.
Yeah. But it happens.
Yeah, you're right. And look, I thought that was a really quick, maybe possibly knee-jerk reaction. Because who's going to pay you now, right?
Yeah.
If they went, look, we kind of really get it. But what we can offer the same kind of sub. Remember those mods? We can reverse them. Yeah, we'd be all right.
But see, Dave, why didn't we wait until we had 4 or 5 subs somewhere in our harbor.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know what I mean? Like going out, like I said, though, going out saying it
currently
now.
have a guy in a scuba suit. Right?
He can swim real well.
And he makes this buzzing sound with his when he's underwater, right?
Bing!
Yeah, he does it every once in a while.
Bing! No, it's actually stupid. I mean, it's a stunt in many ways, right? It's like thumbing your nose at China, saying, we are the Anglo-Saxon Axis.
Do you know what we'll probably have to do? We'll probably have to, in that, the agreement as it falls away, we'll probably end up having to say, give us five subs, right? So we don't, it doesn't cost a big ETC. That's an early termination price, right? If we were to do that, early termination cost. So if we were to negotiate our way down to the end of that negotiation, where it only turned out that we had to end up buying 5 subs off them, they were going to be happy. Still do that because we'll get those quicker than the US ones.
Yeah, but see, this was also a move to counter the Chinese advantage now that they have over the Americans, and this is because the basic lever of power the US has globally is their battle groups, the naval battle groups, especially the aircraft carrier groups, right? Each ocean has at least one aircraft carrier battle group. With the new hypersonic missiles that China has developed, those battle groups have become almost obsolete overnight, right? And in order to, one of the counter moves is this, but I do mean it. The American empire is coming to an end. They're withdrawing. I mean, Donald Trump massively started withdrawing from the international stage, and he had a plan. I understand why too. I mean, don't get me wrong. Paying for military outside your own country is super expensive, right? It's not cheap, especially when you look at the outcome in Afghanistan. I mean, look at Afghanistan, right? For 20 years, countless lives were lost on both sides. Hundreds of servicemen and women, American, French, Australian, UK, Afghani, etc., etc., etc.
Only holding back the flow.
Yeah, only just though, right? Mm-hmm. And as soon as you remove that core, which was the occupation, if you will, it's all over. You might as well have trained, like Dave said, a battalion of rifle chuckers. And
well, they did apparently.
Yeah, who can chuck it furthest? Me. Oh, yeah. Good on you.
So turn around, you're the only one left going, what?
Yeah, but the point here is, so you and I don't disagree with Joe Biden withdrawing either. I get it because it's expensive and you can't.
I thought the withdrawal was terrible unless
I come up with a
conspiracy theory.
Go on.
What if America had people on the inside of the Taliban?
Oh, I know they have.
Yeah, it difference between knowing, So I'm going to presume they do, and that this was just a replacement force that seemed to make sense, right? And so the military, if a completely unknown force took over your military assets, where that's been discussed left, right, and center, and the amount I think got down to $10 billion worth out of all of the money, like 35 million debunked down to about 10 billion worth of assets. If you'd let that happen and get into the hands of the opposition, that would be very bad. But if that wasn't quite the opposition that you told everyone about, remember they did train Taliban fighters, right? They did arm the Taliban, and they did have them, they remember that the whole visa thing got them into the US, passports, trained them up, and so could you imagine if they weren't entirely the opposition that they now they've come up with this ISIS-K, right? Who's the real threat?
So just on that, so Dave is absolutely 100% correct. Let's roll the time back to the Cold War. Ostensibly, we started, it got really bad under Nikita Khrushchev, a Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK. We all remember that. 1962, 1963 was pretty bad. But it was a Cold War, right? And it was a hot war in places like Vietnam or French Indochina then, as well as Afghanistan, then later in the 80s, and other places, places you've never heard of in the South American jungles, in Africa, it's many other places. Korea is another place. So this was a war between Russia, or the USSR, and the USA, ostensibly, right? Yeah. And China on the edges, but not really.
Russia put missiles down in Cuba, right?
Well, they wanted to.
Yeah,
but
I heard that they did, but that's right.
Yeah, no, they very much wanted to, but because Kennedy, was going to blow them out of the water, and then there would be World War III. It didn't happen, and Khrushchev backed down. But the point is that back in the 80s, the Americans funded and trained the Mujahideen, which were the freedom fighters in Afghanistan, right? The Mujahideen. It's funny, you just watch the Rambo movies, you get a glimpse into history, and they funded them significantly. The CIA, and wonderful things all happened there. And what we don't realize as well is that both Vietnam and Afghanistan, or the Golden Triangle there in northern Vietnam with Thailand and Cambodia, etc., they produce a lot of drugs, and so do the Afghanis, right? So this is where most of the poppy flowers are grown in the world. 90% of the world's poppies come from Afghanistan. You look at some of the things in South America, where it's cocaine, right? And again, some of the activities that the Americans undertook there. So there are always many layers that in any given situation, and so the Mujahideen then defeated the Russians with American help. Because you couldn't conquer it, and similar defeat that America had suffered in Vietnam, and they withdrew, and then hey, hurrah! It all worked out wonderful, and then the Taliban stopped playing ball in the 2000s, early 2000s, because the Taliban had taken over as the dominant force after ousting the Russians, and they were quite conservative in their views. Didn't really like America that much. But they still took their money, and they still had a agreeable poppy crop, so they cultivated the poppy so they can extract the opium, which could then be refined into heroin, and then the CIA could take that and make a lot of money, and on we go. Central Asia, though, also has a massive amount of natural gas, and there was going to be a pipeline built through Afghanistan to the Persian Gulf to take advantage of that. And the contract was already signed and ratified, and everyone was happy, and the Taliban said nah. And the pipeline was now in danger. And they also did something unthinkable. They destroyed that year's poppy crop in 2000. They destroyed it. And along comes 9/11 and I guess a plausible reason to invade Afghanistan. Again, nobody of Afghani origin on any of the planes anywhere, allegedly. and here we are again. So the Americans trained the Mujahideen, which pretty much were the Taliban, and Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset at some point, and there's still a lot of CIA assets in there. So when Dave says he wouldn't be surprised if the Taliban had any deep sleepers that are aligned with, look, I would be astounded if there weren't any, right? Especially considering the history, because the history in Afghanistan with the West goes back to the British occupation back in the 19th century. Okay, and it's almost the same kind of scenario. You just can't conquer this country. It's not possible. But we haven't learned our lesson. And of course, we still engage in this gunboat diplomacy, that the West is so good at, and certainly we've seen all these missteps recently, Dave. When it comes, especially the drone strike recently.
I know, right? So if you're unaware of it, Biden made it. I'm not blaming Biden or anyone, but just saying, he made a statement in the press that looked like it was going to end all the conversation with the Taliban taking over the airport and the assets, and this was going to be it. It was a great achievement. We did great over the horizon drone strike, which means they launched a drone from over the horizon at a target that they had eyes on with a satellite, which they'd received intel from. Which was supposed to be ISIS-K people with weapons and going to blow up something at the airport. Look, it's a great story, but it's the same kind of intelligence that weapons of mass destruction. If we haven't heard that story 1,000 times, which turned out to be fake as well. So for whatever the reason was, don't know, but there was children involved, and now on our news, not the American news, in Australia, what they did was they suggested that there was going to be compensation paid to some of the families, right? Those still left alive. All right. However, some of the military chiefs have now spoken out and said, well, obviously the intelligence was flawed, and when pressed, where did the intelligence come from? Zip. Absolutely tightened up, didn't want to talk about anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that says a lot. I've seen a whole bunch of things that if you're going to be the global police, you want to make sure your intel is correct. Doesn't matter what you're doing. And I really had a hard time, with using over-the-horizon weapons to someone who, well, let's just say, you haven't committed a crime yet, right? Certainly the children hadn't committed a crime, and the families, and the two dads and stuff. So whatever it was, I thought, that we should all have our day in court, but war is war, right? If you believe you're judge, jury, and executioner, go ahead, make my day, right? If you think that that's you, well, then you've got a budding role in America's military, right? Or whatever the military is that's doing the world policing. Because, if it was China, Mickey, it would be still China, right? If it's America, it's America. I don't care who steps up to do the role. You'd be damned, right? How good and compliant are all your people going to be if suddenly over the horizon can come a missile that blows you up?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I'm fearing, right? This thing called overreach.
Yeah.
Didn't you just pull out of that country, but now you still get a rocket into it? What the hell is that?
Yeah.
Hang on a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm kind of really disappointed. I'm only disappointed because for two reasons. One is there was a family. It wasn't who they thought it was. Number two is the overreach. That it seems to be quite fashionable. I mean, it was the style of the time, Mickey.
Hey.
All of the fascist leaders and the dictators and the authoritarian approach, government spokespersons and the operation of those governments is kind of really disappointing. And I think that every single tiny step we're making, we're only making in one direction, and it's all towards conflict. Don't care who you are and where you sit or what news you watch. I don't see us doing anything other than that. It's kind of maybe a little disappointing.
Look,
I'm sorry I left you. That's where I left you.
no.
It's like you've got a good news story after a death.
I know, right?
How do you switch that up?
I don't know. I'll carry it through. What we're seeing here is history unfolding, and you know what struck me as very interesting. Something that Scott Morrison said this week. Scotty for marketing. He said the relative era of security that we've enjoyed in this region is behind us. He said that on TV. He said,
he did, that's right.
Yeah, it's no longer a thing. Oh, really? Okay. What does that mean? Well, he's proposing that we are moving into an era of increased insecurity in the region or globally, which is probably true, but we should keep this in perspective.
George Orwell said
that. In the last 100 years, and I'm looking at the beginning of the 20th century, we saw the end of the great empires. The British Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, the German Empire, for what it's worth. They all went into decline and eventually demise. The only one that sort of lasted a little bit longer was the UK, or the British Empire, and that came to an end after World War II. With a spate of declarations of independence in the 60s and 70s, and that was it. But we saw the rise of new powers. After World War I, we saw the rise I guess disproportionate rise of power of the UK and France. That didn't last very long. We saw the rise of power in Germany. We saw Germany develop into a force. We also saw America sort of stepping up, right? And certainly after World War II, there was a new world order, right? I know I hate that term, but it was nonetheless a new world order, which was essentially a bipolar power system. The USSR on the one side and the United States of America on the other side. And that lasted, until the late 80s, 89 to be precise, when the German the Berlin Wall came down and Solidarność in Poland under Lech Walesa pretty much kicked communism out as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and there was a Polish Pope in the Vatican as well. So a lot of things aligned that spelled the end of the USSR, which left America as the sole superpower for quite a long time, and a lot of that was squandered. I think a lot of that potential, through various reasons. And now you have the rise of China, and you have the rise of a few other countries. I don't think India will ever make it. It's just too chaotic inside, and it'll never be a threat globally. I don't think
it's not organized. Maybe.
Yeah, it just isn't. But certainly we see the ascent of China now. Economically, the economy that has weathered the various financial crises over the last few years was China. I find this astounding.
A little isolationist, right?
Right? Yeah, and
it seems to work really well.
And because they were our biggest customer, Australia has weathered it really well as well. Right? So it's really interesting when you see these dynamics at play. Certainly, America and the Western Alliance to some extent have tried to play the great game. It was called the Great Game, right? There's a book by Brzezinski called The Grand Chessboard, and if you haven't read it, I do. I recommend it highly. He was part of the Neocon Alliance under George W. Bush Jr. The Grand Chessboard. Do yourself a favor and read it. The invasion of Afghanistan, the invasion of Iraq, the establishment of footholds in Central Asia, etc., is all part of the greater geopolitical game, of course. I mean, there's some other occult reasons underneath that, and many, many layers, as always, which we can't get into now. But it is shifting. We're seeing these shifts happening now. And this press conference, which we've spent an inordinate amount of time on now, is signaling that we're going into a more escalated phase of this conflict, where we are openly turning our back, not just on China, or when I say turning our back, thumbing our nose not only at China, rather than turning it back, but we're turning our back on long-standing allies like France. Right? I mean, this is a huge blow to the French economy, a $90 billion contract over several decades. I mean, it's not crippling, but it's a big blow. And like I said, the French have withdrawn their ambassadors from both the US and Australia.
That's right.
So a lot of people are left unhappy. And again, we have announced something that's only a concept, which I find astounding. It has real world consequences, right? But it's only a concept. We have not a single submarine anywhere in any harbor that could do anything for anyone. Mm-hmm. And it won't be there for another 10 years at the least. Yeah, I don't get it, Dave.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, completely. And one of the things that has been driving me nuts about that, Mackie, to be honest with you, is we do have Collins class. I can't tell you anything about it. Except that initially it was a little noisy, and I think they corrected that, which was good. The thing that makes a submarine visible is the noise that it makes. So underwater,
yes.
There's a sound signature of every vessel. Doesn't matter what it is, you can identify it. Just like in Australia, we have microphones next to the road. That they're also over the top of the road in every lane, and cameras, and they put together the sound of the vehicle, and they can tell when you're in a new location, and they can now determine how fast you went between those two places, which is really interesting. So underwater, same deal. You can hear the vessels going around. You know what they are, and they have silent running mode, and that's where everyone doesn't walk around anymore. The lights go to a certain color, and what makes more noise? Well, diesel motors certainly make a heck of a noise.
Yes.
Right? And then you've got the cavitation of the propeller blades. And cavitation means that it generates bubbles by spinning in the water. It causes a vacuum behind the blade, which pulls the air out of the water. And those bubbles are also noticeable. And that makes it exaggerates the sound. And it's all completely identifiable, right? And I want to say that the nuclear subs are the most quiet. Of course, they never have to surface or refuel. The only thing you need to do is food your people, because everything else is processed. Even drinking water is, made by, electrolysis. So it's quite a unique thing that they can stay underwater almost indefinitely as long as there's food. And but there's still a negative ceiling of which subs can operate, and it's very rare that there's any kind of tech that can't see them when they get to a certain depth. Though a lot of military will suggest they can't see them. So just beyond Japan, around that 9-dash line, where the Spratly Island chain, comes to a ridge, there's a little channel through there which, if you're just near the submarine's maximum depth, you can navigate your way as long as you've gotten past that island ridge, and then you're okay. So that's a great example. It's been in the news lately, right? So DID says, hang on, have you calculated water density? Well, the cavitation happens anyway, so at any depth. It just depends on how much force you're putting into it. Right? Anyway, so needless to say, any new submarine is going to be made to be more silent, because that's your only weakness. It's the Achilles heel of submarines, and certainly surfacing is, and refueling if you have to. But is this a good asset for Australia? Well, yeah, pretty good. America's spread itself enormously thin, or ludicrously thin, however you want to place it, across the globe. I think it's contraction back to the US to try and extricate itself from as many fights and war as possible. Kind of rebuild, regroup, maybe, if you want to put it that way. The Pacific Ocean is the largest single ocean. It's almost an entire hemisphere. If you get a picture of the globe and turn it on its side, so only you see the edge of the planet, perpendicular to it, you'll see one whole hemisphere is almost entirely ocean. And you've got to understand that's a very vast space, and if you wanted to, make yourself invisible, you could disappear into that and never be seen again. Right? And for America to have to police that, I think it's a bit hard. So, you really do need to do it, and I'm kind of in support of the Orcis thing and buying new subs. But who do we get them from? Yeah, I'm open. Buy some from France. What the hell? Buy some from America. Let's get this thing happening.
It's sort of like the vaccine thing all over, right? We were putting all our eggs in the wrong baskets.
Yeah, initially, that's right. Let's buy all of what no one wants. That's right, because it was on. It's like the bargain bin at Aldi.
Oh, there's my first in line for everything. Pal, guy from down under. It's the guy from down under. I think there's a song in that. But
from the land down under.
Throw another shrimp on the Barbie.
Dead set. I have to say, poor Biden. He is diminishing faster and accelerating into senility. I just don't understand.
Look,
how can Pelosi, lie in bed without spinning?
Yeah, we will have a female president, in my opinion, before long, right? I really believe that's on the cards, because, I mean, he's got lucid moments, right? but they're not really strung together so tightly anymore.
I watched him 5 years ago, and he was completely solid.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
I mean,
so quick.
look, it can be overwhelmingly fast.
Making his cups of tea.
Yeah. So I don't think he'll serve out his term, is my opinion.
No.
I don't think so. If he were to contest the second term after this, he would lose, hands down.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
If he were to serve it, let's say he serves out the first term, right? Let's say he does. I would say he would retire, and either they nominate another candidate, or she would simply step in and then have the vice president nominated. But this is not a winning situation for the US.
The best way I heard this week, as it was put, was as simple as this: the crazy guy, the unhinged guy, the jerk that you just voted out. He was a pacifist. He didn't want to kill people.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And because he was such a jerk, he had to play it by the book. And he did. But now, this guy that you all felt humble in voting in is a killer. Behind the niceness is almost a ruthless dictator.
So
all the changes he's made haven't made any a lick of sense anywhere.
So let's be clear: Barack Obama ordered more actions than George Bush Jr.
In fact, Obama wrote the most presidential orders in the history, even the cumulative history of all the prior presidents.
Yeah. So there's this public image which was cultivated very strongly, but then there's the reality of it, right?
Yeah.
So we think of the Republicans as warmongers and such, and to some extent there's some truth in it. But if you actually do the statistical comparison, there is not much between them.
It's kind of a dog and pony show, because the pacifist approach, the hey man, 60s hippie kind of approach, and here he is authorizing drone strikes that are on bad intel.
Yeah, at least chill 10 children.
Yeah.
At least the Republicans are honest about where they stand on gun control, on relatively on their militaristic stance on the world, etc. So they're honest, right? This is what it is. Now Trump was different in that he had no interest at all in foreign policy. Not really. He didn't care, which is fine because he's a businessman. He wants to make sure that America runs as an economy, like it runs well. That was his intent, I think, right? And all the things he saw, like the treaty that he had with Australia around resettling refugees, etc. It was this terrible treaty, and he's not wrong for America. It was a terrible treaty. It really was. So you can't fault him. I mean,
border.
Yeah. Well, look again. We all talk about border control, but in Australia, if we do it, that's okay. But if he wants to do it, that's a bad thing, right? So look. Am I a Trump fan? No, I'm not. But I understand what he's trying to do, and I get it. Now, his personality doesn't help him any, right? He's a narcissist, and he wants to be right, and he does, come down on people pretty hard. So his personality is actually diluting his message, in my opinion, for many, especially left-leaning people. But he's not wrong in many things. He really isn't. From the American point of view, okay? Forget the global point of view. You have to look at it from the point of view of the USA and how much money they've spent overseas and how many bad treaties they've signed. So you can't fault him for trying what he wanted, what he was doing, right? Because it was unpalatable to many people, and the way he was unpalatable as well. It's just his personality. But
if I'm going to lean into the microphone and whisper, that's crazy right there.
Cray.
This is David making Shiny Side Out. It's the end of the first hour. We'll see you after the short break for the second hour, where we'll be talking about the ET question, a rational approach.